we will be discussing matters that are of pertinence to you and your automobile. As always, we hope to impart to you some useful automotive information and perhaps provoke some automotive conversation on this so far sunny but cool Saturday morning in the Mohawk Valley. And I actually saw a few flowers popping up out of the ground, so I think spring might finally be here. It's a little chilly, but it's coming along, right? Hey, we've got lots of stuff to talk about today, and most importantly, we're going to give our first crown giveaway for the salt eliminator. If there's ever time to want to get the salt off your car, it's this month, in month of April. So we're going to do that a little later in the show, so pay close attention because we're going to give away 2 treatments for the next 3 weeks. So that'll be a total of 6 over 3 weeks. So pay attention. If you don't know when I'm going to do it. Hey, but first, we've got our car care tip of the week. Actually, it's a 10-fold car care tip. I've got 10 things you should be checking to make sure that you have your spring items taken care of in your car. I mean, let's face it, without proper car care in the spring, you could have a ton of problems this summer. So what I want you to do is pay close attention because we're going to talk about the 10 must things you have to do this spring. Now, obviously, many of them are common sense. Some of them you probably don't think about. Starting with tire pressure. Obviously, correct tire pressure will make your tires last longer, improve your vehicle's economy. These are things we all know. And of course, you want to also check the spare. That's one thing that people always seem to forget about. You know, seasonal changes can cause a tire to lose or gain enough inflation pressure every 10 degrees of temperature change outside. So in other words, as the temperature changes, so does your pressure inside your tires. And that can happen pretty quickly. So as we go from cold to hot, that's what changes your tire pressure. So take a look at it. And remember, the correct pressure can be found in the jam of your glove box or of course on the side of the door. But check to make sure you know what it is and have it looked at. And don't forget the spare. Another item, of course, is your engine's air filter. We talked about the air filter a few weeks back. Every 6 months or 7,500 miles, it should be looked at. Repair shops typically do that when they change oil. But remember, this is actually one item you could do yourself pretty well. The old light bulb trick still works. And that's when you take a 60-watt light bulb from a work light or drop light and literally just put it to the inside of the filter after you pull it out, or the back of the filter, depending if you got a flat one or a round one, and then see if you can have any light, what you can see. If most of the light is blocked, it's time to get a new filter. We also want to talk about battery clamps, cables, and terminals. You know, nobody enjoys walking into a parking lot to discover their car's not going to start. You want to reduce the risk of a dead battery by maintaining the cables, clamps, and connections that keep the power flowing from the electricity from your battery to the rest of the car. Now, if your engine is cranking a little slowly or your lights look a little dim, it actually could just be a loose connection. You want to clean them up, put them back on, and then one thing you want to remember is that if you put a little grease on top of the filter or top of the clamps when you take them and put them back on clean, a little grease will keep them from corroding, and that corrosion is what gets them in trouble over time. Another item that it's time to look at is your washer fluid. It's a good time of the year to use up the rest of your winter supply. You probably still have that stuff that's called 20 below. And of course, as we get into the summer season, you may want to start looking at the stuff that says it removes bugs. I've tested a bunch of those, and I like a particular one made by Prestone. It works real well, and it does help dissolve the bugs. So it'll be the time of the year where you'll be seeing bugs out there, so that's what you want to look at. In the wintertime, of course, different business. You want that stuff to go to 20 below. But this is a good time to use up your supply. And a little tip here, you can mix the two types 50-50. I sometimes do that just so you can make it go longer because the one that takes the bugs out is a little more expensive. What I tend to do is save that for when I'm going to take a road trip. If you're just driving around town, of course, it's not that big a deal. You don't get a lot of bugs. But as you know, once it gets warm out and you're on the highway, lots of bugs. Of course, the next item is engine oil. And of course, it's the lifeblood of your motor. So you want to make sure that you use the correct oil. And remember that today's engines use a lighter grade of oil. So it also makes it more apt to use more oil. It's amazing to me how many cars use oil today and what's considered normal by the manufacturer. The most important thing to remember about engine oil is to follow the recommendations that the vehicle came with for viscosity. In other words, if you're used to putting old straight W or 10W30 in your car for years, your new car may use something like 5W30 or 0W30. You want to make sure you put the right stuff in. Engines today are far more tolerant, closer tolerance than when they built them. In other words, they're not as sloppy like they used to be. So they use much lighter oil. Good time to check your wipers, right? If you have winter wipers on, I think you could safely take them off on April 15th. Obviously, when you do that, make sure you do it carefully, clean them, put them away. But if you are just running straight summer blades, so to speak, what you can do is just clean them right now. And the best way to clean them is with a paper towel and a little of that blue washer fluid I talked about earlier. You just wipe the blade down. Pretty simple. You want to check them. If you see damage on them, which typically happens from the wintertime because of ice, you may want to change them so they don't streak. We talk about antifreeze, of course, in the fall time, but in the summertime it keeps your engine cool. You want to make sure that you look under the hood and you check to see the level every time the oil is changed. You want the system flushed every once in a while. I say that you should probably flush it every 3 to 4 years. Antifreeze itself never goes bad, but what happens to it is it loses its property of preventing corrosion. And that's the real issue, is that the corrosion begins to accumulate inside your engine, mainly because over time you have different metals with liquid going through them. It kind of has an electrical property that helps really to start corroding things like aluminum, especially the differences in metals between the engine block or the head, for example. Those differences actually create electrical current inside your car. So what you want to do is every 3 to 4 years, and I'd say 4 years, 5 years at the most, have that flushed out. And of course, you always add 50-50 fresh. We talked about checking tire pressures. You want to check your tire treads. And of course, today's the day where you've got to try to get if you have studded snow tires, you want to get them off. April 15th is kind of the day you want to get those off. I was someplace yesterday and a car pulled into the parking lot with studded snow tires on all four. And I said, well, that person's got a great setup for the winter. I think they got to get the tires off. They made a heck of a racket. But again, if you have less than, again, what's legal versus what's good. Now, if you're down to 3 or 4 30 seconds of tire tread, that's legal, but it's not going to work so well in a situation where you have a lot of rain. So when you get down less than 4, you want to start getting an idea about replacing them. And of course, use a quarter, which I like to use. If you can see above Washington's head, at any point it's time to replace the tires. Now, there's one item that most people don't check very often. That's belt tension. There's a belt tensioner that's under the hood of your car that keeps the tension on the drive belts. Now, in the old days we had fan belts, as you may recall, but today most cars use one great big serpentine belt or more than one. But for the most part, these belts really do the same job as the old fan belts. They transfer the rotation of the engine's crankshaft to various accessories to help the vehicle function properly. In the old days, we used to check for the looseness. We had a belt tension gauge. We used to put it on there, and we'd loosen up the bolt, and of course we would tighten the item up that it needed, whether it was the alternator or the power steering pump or the air conditioning bracket. But today's world, they have automatic belt tensioners because these belts are critical to the operation and they're big. So what they do is they have an automatic tensioner that actually keeps it running. Well, in many cases, these tensioners wear out. And of course, if the tension's too tight, that damages the bearings that can cause premature component failure. So what you want to do is check the belt condition and the tension at every oil change. Most auto manuals, if you look in the owner's manual, they want those belts changed at about 60,000 miles. That's a good rule of thumb. And also remind yourself at that time to check your owner's manual, because some cars have a timing belt that has to be serviced at 60,000 miles. That is far more critical. Many engines will self-destruct if the timing belt goes and it's not replaced. So again, look at your owner's manual. Another item to check, of course, is brake fluid. And again, you can check the supply of brake fluid pretty easily. You look on this, basically open the hood, look at the reservoir, and the reservoir is clear, and you can see the marks. That's low and full. But remember a couple things. If it's low, it's usually because the brakes are getting worn out. Or if you had a leak, you'd kind of know that right away. Remember, when the brake pads are new, let's say for argument's sake they're ½ an inch thick, all the way around, and you top off the fluid. Well, as they begin to wear and get thinner and thinner and thinner, that fluid is pushing those brake pads further and further. So when they get down to, let's say, ½ inch all the way around, what ends up happening is the brake fluid level drops in the reservoir. So if you get down to the low point and you've had no leaks, I'm willing to bet you're getting close enough to want to have those brakes checked before they go bad. In a lot of cases, you can avoid a more expensive brake jack by changing the pads out before they're totally worn out. So folks, that's a lot of items, right? We've got basically a tire pressure, we've got your brakes, cables, clamps, and terminals, you've got your windshield washer fluid, you've got your engine oil, you've got your wiper blades, you got tire treads, you got your belt tensioner, and you got your brake fluid. That's a lot of stuff to check. But you know what? Just get them one at a time, because a pound of cure, right? An ounce of prevention versus a pound of cure, right?